Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd, and this is Ottawa Valley Vintage Motorcycles. And as you can see, we have a nice vintage motorcycle here. This is a Yamaha RD400 Daytona Special. It's a 1980. Anyway, as promised, today we're going to do a pressure test on the crankcase. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take off the exhaust and the carburetors, and I'm going to pressurize the crankcase and see how good those crank seals are. Last time I rode it, it would rev up really hard, as if almost felt like the clutch was slipping a little bit. But I don't think that's the case. I think we had an air leak. So they often leak around these crossovers here, and I noticed when I was doing the carbs, this crossover tube was a little loose going in. I mean, I did clamp it down really well. But the leak test will tell us if it's leaking there or at the crank seals, and if we have to pull the motor out and do the crank, so be it. Kind of be a bit of a bummer, but that's the way it is. So when I take the exhaust off, I'm also going to be sandblasting the exhaust, and I'm going to powder coat it in a high temp black, and I'm also going to weld in the bungs for the exhaust gas temperature sensors. So so we got thermocouplers to go in there, so this should be kind of neat. So stay tuned, and please like and subscribe. So this is the little kit that I use. It's nothing fancy, but it does the job. So it's like a freezer plug. As you tighten that nut down, it expands the rubber and seals it up. So this kit can do a single cylinder or 2-cylinder engines. If I want to do a triple, then I'll just have to get another set of plugs. So we've got your 2 plugs for the exhaust, and then that's going to go into the intake, and that's going to plug the other intake, and then I'll be able to just gently pump it up. So stay tuned, and you can see this baby in action. Okay, so I'm going to start just by removing these springs. So I'm just going to get on that with my little hook and just down and up. That's one. Two. Next up, the expansion chamber actually bolts on back here by the rear foot peg. So I can tell that there's a different bolt that's been put in here, and it's a different nut because it's it feels like it's not metric, because I had to use a 13mm wrench. One side, really light exhaust, really like that. And you can see the can, it's gonna need some work. Probably no packing left in it at all either. Now I'll just move around to the other side and do the other side. Super light. The problem was I couldn't get it off because the race stand in the back was touching the exhaust, so I couldn't let it drop down. So that's why I was struggling so much. I'm actually super impressed with these exhausts. Like, I don't know if you can tell on camera. I'm gonna have to weigh these. Like, they weigh absolutely nothing. These factory pipes, super lightweight. I mean, they look like the end of the world, all the paint coming off and everything, but once I get these cleaned up, these are going to be absolutely great. I might swap out that canister too, because I'll try buffing it up, but I might replace it with a carbon fiber one. We'll see. These weigh nothing. Okay, so I rolled the motor over a few times, and I had to look up inside at the pistons, and they actually don't look too bad. I'll try to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so next up we'll have to pull off these carbs, undo the air filter, a little wide boot here, and then we're going to plug these intakes. Okay, got my little screwdriver set here. I like it because I can just pick any screwdriver I want out of there, and I can carry it around. It's kind of handy. So I'll loosen off the wide boot first for the air filter. Okay. And then get a sharp little Phillips from here. Loosen that off. Now we're going to go around and do the other side. Okay, so I got both sides unscrewed. So now that air filter just slips off like that, out of the way, nice and easy. And then these carbs should be able to just wiggle them out like so. There we go. That's one. I'll go over and do the other side. Okay, so I got the other side off now. Like so. Slip that out. Now, it looks like I have a little bit of fuel in the fuel line, so I'm not going to take that line off until I get a little pan under here. But I'm just going to go on the other side and do the same on that side. Okay, now if in case I lose any fuel out of here, if it starts to leak, I got a little flute underneath. There we go. Set that cover in here. And I'll just go around and do the same to the other side. Okay, so now I got both carbs out. Just going to slip that air filter out of the way there too, might as well. Okay, and then the Y boot, pretty nice. There, now we can plug these and get our gauge on there. Okay, so we're just going to start by making sure that this is nice and clean so we can get a good seal. And on this side as well, the exhaust, which did look quite dirty. We'll start to plug these up. Okay, so just insert that in there like that. That's one. And then this one will be number 2. So just snug it up a little bit first. Getting there. There we go. There, nice and tight. Now we'll do the intakes. Okay, so now we're going to plug the intake side. So we'll just move this out of our way for a minute. To tap that into place. There, I got it bottomed out there now. So I'll tighten up that hose clamp and that'll tighten that one down. You want this nice and tight. There we go. Now we'll go around to the other side. Now for this side. There we go. Good. So now the idea is, make sure you can see this. Okay, a little better lighting. Not the greatest, but so we need to hold 6 psi for 6 minutes. So if 310 on this gauge is equal to 6 psi. So what I'm going to do is, you have to tighten this little connector right here. This little valve, make sure it's tight. And then, make sure you can see that. Of course my light just died. Okay, let's try this again. So, you see this little chart. So 310 is equal to 6 psi. Okay, so we need to crank it up to 310, and we have to hold it for 6 minutes. And we shouldn't be able to drop more than 0.5 of a psi. So take the little valve here, make sure it's tight, and then we pump this baby up. $260, $280, $300, $310. You set your timer and see if it holds it for 6 minutes. So I'm not going to get you to wait for the 6 minutes. So we'll come back in a minute when it's done. Okay, so there we are. We're about 190 mm's. So it dropped from 310 down to 190. Let's say. So it's 190. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120 mm's. So we're over 2 psi anyway, almost 2.5. So the spec is 0.5. So we definitely have a leak somewhere. So I'm going to get out a some soapy water, and we're going to spray in around here. Maybe we'll get lucky and there'll be bubbles coming up out of here or out of our exhaust. But I have a feeling it's the crank seals. So we'll see. We'll do a little test. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pump this back up to 310, which is 6 psi. And then we're going to spray a little soapy water in around areas where we could have a leak. And that'll rule out whether or not it's a crankcase seals or not. So it could be leaking around the thing that the plugs that we just put. So we spray that down. We'll look for some bubbles. Not seeing any on that side. Not seeing any there. Now the cylinder head itself. Not seeing any there. That's looking good. Okay, so now we'll bring the camera in. We'll have a look in here. So these things here tend to leak. See that? We're leaking air right there. So we might get lucky. That could be just our leak. Because she is dropping considerably. We're going to keep going, see if we have any more around here. That looks good. Okay, so I'm going to go around to the other side and check that as well. You see that? It's leaking right there. That's good. Good to know. And now we're going to check this side. Not seeing any leaks there. So that's good. So we're going to tighten those up and then we'll check again. So we're on to something. I can actually hear it. Can you hear that? I can actually hear it leaking. Tighten this up a bit. Go around, tighten up the other side. So it's getting to the point where after tightening it, I still can't build up any pressure. Like how hard it is to build pressure here. So I think what's happening is when I tighten that clamp as tight as it can go, it's the rubber's probably so badly distorted that it's just not holding any pressure. So I'm probably going to have to order some new boots. We'll see if I can pump it up. It's just dropping so quick. Yeah, you can hear it. Hear it hissing. So there's my leak. So there's no sense tearing this motor down. I'm going to try to seal these up and then I'll retest. And then if it cured it, then great. If it didn't, then we'll dive down into the crank seals. But I might have found my my culprit right here. Perfect. So we'll leave it at that, and because it'll take me a while to get new boots. So just remember, before you start doing this test, make sure the pistons are about mid-stroke. It'll help. And this test is, it tests a lot of things, like the head gasket could be leaking, the base gasket could be leaking. Most commonly is the intake area. It could be the exhaust could be leaking out through here. It could be leaking out of the spark plugs, and it could be the crankcase seal. So this test does checks a lot of things. So if you don't have one of these little testing tools, I suggest getting one. They're very, very handy to have for troubleshooting. Thank you very much for watching Ottawa Valley Vintage Motorcycles. Please like and subscribe.